Yes, that's right.
Recording is on.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of project management and consulting stuff is my main history, but I just have a particular desire to see strong community banking.
So do we. You're in the right spot. So we're like 2 minutes over. I see Patricia, good to connect. And we'll give it maybe one more minute. And before we hop in, I'll do just a basic intro. This is going to be a short call today, just to kind of get sort of launch this initiative, around merchant experience. There will be many more, I think, calls and communications over time, because as we know, there's a lot to do in terms of getting merchants on board and accepting Bitcoin and Lightning. I'll hop in. I think there's a couple more people that may be joining along the way. But one of the things that we wanted to do is, just to set the foundation for those that know, the Bitcoin Beach wallet is built on the Galoy Money open source Bitcoin banking platform. There is there's a tipping page currently, which I'll just share my screen while I'm talking, and show you kind of what exists today. Kemal, give me a thumbs up if you can see my tab here.
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. I will see. Oh. I'll try a different method here. We currently have I'll share the entire screen. Why not? Go with it. Okay. So, and I'll bring this up. So we currently have a tipping page. So if you go to pay.bbw.sv/username, a merchant could go here, or it could send this to an individual to create an invoice. So if I reload this experience, let me reload it without any value in there. It actually loads.
Andrew.
Yep.
We're not seeing your screen yet.
Oh, what is going on? I might have
Did you have to give permission for the app to see your screen? You might need to restart your browser if that was the case.
No. Pechman, when I hand it over to Pechman, maybe he can show. There we go.
We can see something now.
Perfect. Thank you, Kamal.
Yeah.
And so this is a current experience. It operates more like a tipping page. However, it could be used as a merchant to either send a link to a customer or to open on their own phone. But as you see, as Kemal is working through it, it is not probably the best or the simplest experience in terms of enabling like a POS like functionality, right? So we really want to get to a really nice and seamless way for people in the merchant side of the equation to accept Bitcoin. And so you think about things like a number pad that pops up, potentially some additional branding. And so we wanted to open this conversation, and I'll hand it over to Pechman, who has a couple flows, a couple ideas down on paper. And like I said, we'll probably have a couple conversations in this space in the coming weeks. And we also are planning to issue some bounties to get the community involved in kind of supporting this effort. So, Pechman, without further ado, I will flip it over your way.
Sorry, guys, I got this thing with the brights. I might have to rejoin. Do you want to go for a few more seconds, Andrew? I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure thing. Continue. I guess one of the things I would maybe do before while Peshman kind of fixed the technical issue is, we have a couple folks on the call, from different experience. I see Patricia. I don't know if you're willing to kind of chime in, and I know that you had identify that you'd be doing some work from a Bitcoin design guide perspective and provide maybe this group a short, some thoughts on what you're thinking about or working on.
Absolutely. Can you guys?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I could hear you, Patricia.
Okay, cool. Hang on. There we go. Thanks for the intro, Andrew. I don't know why I was cutting out. Maybe just too many people on the call. I'm not sure. But no, I'm super excited about this. Thank you for the invite, everyone. And the Figma file is loading for me. It looks awesome so far. I kind of got curious about merchant experiences through BTC Pay Server and a lot of work that was happening with activists in the Human Rights Foundation and noticing a lot of holes in some of these processes and people being really confused. And I still don't think there's a really good way for people to understand Lightning basics. So I'm really curious about how this will be, and I know it will be a successful use case, but kind of how it will inform other communities and how it will inform the design guide. So for me, I've been, I guess, putting in a little bit of work for best practices for how we would do this merchant section for the design guide. So I would love any insights from not just this call, but the team in general, your findings, and how we can incorporate that to something bigger.
Awesome. Peshman, do we have you back in action?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's not letting me share my screen. So maybe we could just continue on Figma if everyone's on there.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of people in Figma. So if everybody looks in the chat, there's Peshman provided a link to where we are. And you could even click on the P in the top of the screen and you could follow along as he walks through some of the things that we're thinking about or gathering so far.
Also,
yeah, so
come out, if your screen share's working, maybe you could share the Figma for people that can't go on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think what we wanted to do, obviously, was take a look at some ideas regarding merchants and possible solutions and design ideas that come to boot regarding that. I looked at just a few quick people out there that are essentially competition, like BTC Pay Server. They've been around for a very long time, very reputable within this space. And of course, I would say very advanced and nebulous user experience because it's really for us, right? Like as Bitcoiners, you definitely need to have a lot of savviness in regards to just overall technology experience to actually navigate through BTC Pay Server, setting that up. It's not very well defined for the layman, in my opinion, and it does get the job done. I would say the majority of the payment solutions out there on WordPress or anything of that sort is utilizing BTC Pay Server. I've of course provided some screenshots on the right side of the Figma board. I'm also kind of shown that this section, you could see it from the payer side as well. And I think from that experience as well is very convoluted in my opinion. And I think we just need to simplify that user experience in order to really gain massive adoption. There's also, this should be Ibex Mercado. So yeah, Ibex is out there. I believe they're situated in Guatemala. They're working hands-on with people on the ground there. I think they're very promising in terms of just the simplicity of the user experience that they provide. And we could dig into that a little bit more. Essentially, they have a really simplified dashboard where you're able to see managers, so people that are also managing the business with you or the brick and mortar store. If you have more than one store, you could also create multiple store managers. That's also tied to accounts. So obviously that's kind of like a wallet. BTC Pay Server calls it a wallet. You know, the IBEX folks call it an account. I guess you could create a default currency for that account, and also tie a manager to the account as well. There's also obviously the Bitcoin payment terminals, which are basically just a nomenclature for the POS terminal itself. It's kind of what you see when you're going up to a POS terminal to pay, or you're being sent a QR code through the web browser or what have you. So that experience also is quite interesting and quite streamlined, and we could take a look at that as well. I can probably just guide you to the screenshots here at the bottom. Yeah, so you can see very, very simple dashboard. You're able to see the sats received, total fiat that you have, total sats, and of course all the transactions that are coming through and transpiring. The manager screen, very simple. The account screen, also very simple. You get an ID to each account, essentially, that's being stored in locally. And actually, within the settings, I found this very interesting. There is kind of a scroll to designate the denomination of your balance. So there's a 0% USD fiat option and 100% BTC option that's set to default. So I believe what's transpiring here is, regardless of the denomination of the deposits that you're receiving, you could opt in to essentially convert automatically the certain percentage of your balance breakdown. I think that's really interesting. I think setting that to 100 by BTC by BTC makes sense, but some people on the ground may want to change that. So I like the fact that early on, the IBEX folks are thinking about this potential UX feature that I think is quite important on the ground for everyone that wants to adopt this. Let's just go a bit further. This is the BTC Pay terminal, or whatever you want to call it, the POS terminal. Very simple. It just comes with essentially a number pad. It always shows the IBEX Pay logo. I think there should be an option for the store to also apply their own aesthetics and brands in this section. Perhaps that's a feature in the future. They're immediately able to input an amount for this particular transaction or charge in sats and dollars. If you see the IBEX logo, it's kind of like the goat at the bottom, where the point or the dot should be on the numpad. They actually provide you with a QR code at all times. So basically, you're able to open this QR code, and I believe what it is essentially a tipping jar. It allows you to set your own price, and essentially it's a request for an amount instead of it being in an invoice. But if you go back to the numpad, you could also input an amount, and it actually does create an invoice for you in dollars and sats. And I believe they put a 20-minute interval for the QR code to take place as well. That's kind of the gist. I think what I wanted to do is provide some screens early on that we could probably jam on. Just a caveat that this is the first bounty that we're proposing through Galoy, and the idea was to start also creating a design system for our own internal use, and as well as open source usage. So I'm more than happy to kind of share with you the work in progress design system where a lot of these components are being built. And you're more than welcome to have a look at the progress there. But nonetheless, these screens that you're seeing in the sandbox, they do present components that we're building internally. They're utilizing Tailwind CSS, which allows us to kind of build and iterate on components quite fast and utilize React JS to like really build those out. But yeah, like basically I have a few ideas here. So just kind of like a very welcome onboarding experience. You're kind of a nice to have dashboard where you're able to see the sats received, fiat received, total fiat, total sats. So obviously, if you remember, Galoy is working on a BTC USD denominated wallet as well. So we want to perhaps show both sats and dollars received and total at all times. And I think that probably makes quite a lot of sense for the user and as well as the owner of the store. So I've just kind of set up like a Starbucks El Salvador option here. We could probably have multiple stores within San Salvador. You as the administrator can see all the different accounts, which are essentially stores or wallets, for lack of a better word. If you look at it from a BTC pay server standpoint, each one comes with a pay terminal. And also you have the transactions that are taking place kind of on the same page. Feel free to play around with this on your own accord, but I've also started thinking about the BTC POS terminal, PACE terminal. These are kind of like some initial screen designs that I did on the right side, where perhaps it's kind of like just a pupuseria in El Zante. They don't really have any particular branding or anything. We just default to like a blue color. They're able to see the numpad to input and charge a Lightning payment, and also a WebPay link. The WebPay link is essentially what Andrew was talking about. We had created that pay.bbw.sv server for kind of a tipping jar. For lack of better words, I'm just calling that a WebPay link, but that could change. Yeah, and the thought here is they're able to utilize the numpad to either create a WebPay link or essentially establish a charge on and a Lightning address and an invoice. So you can kind of go through that on your own, and let me know any thoughts or suggestions you might have for improving the UX. But I think the point was to really perhaps solicit your thoughts and feedbacks on kind of like the happy path to getting anyone on the ground in Central America started and utilizing a POS terminal for their own brick and mortar store or any digital store that they might have. So the MVP is the key here, and we really want to start iterating on this on many different levels. We also definitely have some ideas for add-ons and plugins. I would love to start once we actually have something built internally, I would love to extend this to perhaps WooCommerce or any of the other CMS solutions out there. So I think keeping it simple for now, but also having considerations for nice to haves and plugins that you might also think is a viable option here.
I think there was a question in the chat from Pete who said that he has a bunch of questions on context, which he may have missed previously. I'm not sure, Pete. It'd be good if you could just ask here, because maybe other people are confused.
Yeah, no worries. Let me just grab my notebook. Yes, I was curious, like really what context the POS is being used, because I guess we're looking at various different existing technical solutions now, but the way that you would want to build and implement something like this would be very different based on, as you say, like a Starbucks type environment where there's a whole corporate structure you need to integrate into versus the pupuseria. So is there like a kind of target for your first customer? And then I guess I'm curious then, like, are we talking about more base transactions? And then if so, do we have like a flow of what the current cash transaction flow looks like, and potentially like some of the timings around that, so we could get a feel for, what would actually work as a replacement, and maybe some more. But that's the main thrust.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to get more context in that regard. I would say, personally, I think what we're looking at is the lowest hanging fruit option for adopting as many merchants and vendors in El Salvador, perhaps Guatemala, Honduras. I would say the Starbucks design that you're seeing, I can see why it's throwing you off. It's really just a really nice to have design that I started creating.
Hey, Precious, could you mute your mic?
Yeah, I would say like don't look at the Starbucks as kind of like the actual context we're trying to design for. I think we want to get there. Obviously, that entails so many different considerations for a big enterprise company that wants to actually adopt this. I think it's really more on kind of like the Maria Papasaria side of things, where really we're just trying to include a very simple POS terminal for users to also accept dollars as well as Lightning transactions. I would say I don't want to put any constraints on this discussion. It's really everything under the sun, but maybe just for the sake of getting the flow correct and solicit your opinions on, I think really have it from the standpoint of this just being for the everyday person on the ground in South and Central America.
Maybe if I can add here just one point. We had this session about USD wallet in the Bitcoin Beach wallet. For those that haven't caught up on that, we're currently building an option for users of the Bitcoin Beach wallet where they can hold their value in USD denomination with a synthetic dollar. So that is soon coming to the Bitcoin Beach wallet, actually, 2 weeks, hashtag. But yeah, it's working basically. It's only the front end that needs to be implemented. I think, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the backend is already working. And basically what it allows is not just to denominate their value, that their Bitcoin in their wallet in US dollars, but actually to peg their value to the actual US dollar value, right? So it's done with a derivative exchange on the back. So not to go too deep into that, but just to explain, there is a difference in display denomination, which we already have in the Bitcoin Beach wallet, where you can show how much your currently held Bitcoin is worth in US dollars. So we have that, obviously. We can show it in sats, which is the native currency, but also like the current price, according to the current price of Bitcoin in US dollars, you can denominate the value of your sats in US dollars. So in addition to that, you're also going to have the option to hold it in stable, quote unquote, US dollar wallet. So, and that will be like similar to the IBEX scenario where the user can determine, do I want to keep the incoming money in Bitcoin, or do I want to keep it in US dollar, in synthetic US dollar? That option also will be available to merchants and should be represented accordingly in the payment merchant POS.
If I could chime in real quick, just on something in the chat as well. Patricia mentioned, was there some mention of a bounty? Was there specific help you want from the community? And just leaning onto something Pejman mentioned, like we're starting the merchant conversation, which is a big one with many angles, right? There's different use cases to solve for. There is sort of a future, like, I mean, BTC Pay is amazing. And I think, a lot of these people are contributors to it and have made it there. And so like, we want to tap into the community and build alongside the community there. And I think that there's two paths. One of them is like a short term, just like improving the tipping page to have sort of number pad and some basic improvements to be easier to be used as like a light POS in an in-person environment. But one of the things we have to do is to identify the various use cases, and those will be longer term design projects. And so the Bounty perspective will likely be like a shorter term front end dev in terms of a light POS screen or experience. And then there will be future work to be done. And then I guess the last thing I would say, based on some of Patricia's comments, is regarding the nature of the transactions in terms of selling in a store versus accepting tips versus booking in a workshop. Like, do you have some of those documented? I know like Bitcoin Design Guide, for instance, has like personas and research, but I don't actually recall if there's like some like a merchant angle to that at this point, or is that something that we're working on?
If I can chime in, yes, that's something I'm working on. So I've interviewed probably, I'd say like 64 merchants at this point. And yeah, I would love for that to be more open source. What I want to do is not dox people. So I'm trying to like get more of those interviews out. But certainly, Andrew, you and I can meet if that's helpful, or other members of the team, and I could share that, confidentially.
Totally.
Just because I do want this to be a helpful resource, but I don't want anyone who generously shared their information to be at risk in any kind of way. But yeah, that's my whole goal with like the merchant section, is so that when people are working on projects exactly like this, they don't have to ask any questions. It should be obvious, and there'll be parallels from what people are currently doing in open source projects and how we can like just grab some of those materials and add it in. That's my hope. It's an ongoing project, but maybe I can work on some of this with you guys and add to that as part of the design guide. That would be awesome.
Super cool. And on that note, again, this is kind of kicking off, at least for the work that we're doing on the merchant side, a series of or a few different projects. Where would be the best way to do this? I don't know that there's a merchant channel, or maybe I'm missing it in Bitcoin Design, or should we go in like the Galoy Design Slack? Like, would love to stay in touch on this and kind of share some thoughts in between calls. Any thoughts there, Patricia?
Yeah, no, there's not a merchant section. You're totally like correct. We have plenty of room to improve, and I can pitch it to the community and kind of share this call. It's something I've thought about, but wasn't really sure if there was a lot of interest in. Yeah. But now that I know I won't be the only one in that channel, that would be great. Yeah, and I think other people will join too, because even though it seems like there's thousands of people and only a few that are pretty active, maybe just having a place where people can come in the future would also be great, and a place where I can direct people to, because you're not the only one who's asked me about that. So yes, I will bring that up with the community. Thank you for nudging me on that.
Oh, for sure. That's exciting, and we will definitely be participants in that. So we scheduled this for a short, like 30-minute, again, intro call. But before we hop, was there any other questions or thoughts that we might actually take into the Slack channel for future conversation?
I've got a list of details. If you guys have to like hop right now, though, then maybe I can type it up and send it to you later. But if you've got a couple more minutes, I'm happy to talk about them.
I've got a couple minutes for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess just, some of these are just like really nitpicky details. I understand this is like a super early draft. I think one thing that kind of confused me, just kind of looking at the main like Starbucks merchant thing, was like the GitHub icon at the top. I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, but that seemed out of place. I was kind of curious about, in terms of the dashboard, like thinking about sats received and fiat received. Like when a user sees like a dashboard like this, I guess when I look at this, I'm not entirely clear. Am I looking at, did I receive like $100 worth of Bitcoin and 15,897 sats, or did I receive, 15,000 sats in my Bitcoin account, and did I receive $100 in my fiat account? So I guess I like, just as a viewer, I wasn't entirely sure like what accounts these money were going to. Like if I was looking at it just a different denomination or what. I think on the you know, just this is just an opinion, but on the like paying for Cafe Cortado, paying store name, all of this with like the QR code, you know, I'm a little like the icon in the center. I'm not like I don't know if it necessarily like harms the experience in any way, but I'm a little bit I'm just a little bit skeptical of like the information it's trying to convey, because I think of like icons as being like, I want to convey something real quick, and I've got like a Bitcoin symbol and a lightning and an arrow, and I guess I'm kind of curious if like if that information is really relevant to someone in this situation who's running like a pupuseria. It's just it's a lot of detail to convey, and I'm not sure if all that's relevant. I could be wrong on that. But I guess another kind of thing, I don't know what the right answer to this. I was kind of curious, like in terms of, you know, you're talking about doing Bitcoin and fiat, and like we have they have the ability to receive it as Bitcoin or as fiat. And so like, is this the kind of thing that you might envision that they would change like in the admin screen or something like that? And it's kind of like a universal setting that applies for all their transactions? Or is it the kind of thing that you'd envision the merchant like kind of changing on the fly when they're typing in the amount of money that they want to charge the customer? So those are just kind of my comments and questions. And but I love the work that I'm seeing here. This looks like a really cool project.
Yeah, thanks. I would say like the Starbucks design for the dashboard is really just like extrapolating to what we want to see at some point. None of those fields are supposed to be like solidified. I would say none of this is solidified, besides maybe some of the screens you're looking at direct currently with the numpad, because we do have like the tipping experience for the most part has been kind of like there for a while. I basically just created the dashboard to just start us on a path of thinking about what the end result might actually look like, because we are working with two different denominations, right? Like it's the sats and the fiat, and how does that dance play out in the overall user experience and interfacing with the merchant. Going back to what you're saying regarding kind of like the numpad itself and making sure if the merchant can override that, if perhaps the payer wants to maybe pay in sats or something, right? Like, how do we do that here? I think it's a good idea. I think maybe that could be a toggle within the platform itself or the dashboard itself, where an account, for example, let's say you're creating just a random account. It's your only account for this pupuseria. The person maybe just wants to only receive dollars, right? So the default denomination can be set to dollars. So if you're going there to pay, you're essentially utilizing your Lightning wallet, but it's being converted and moved to a dollar denominated account when the merchant is receiving it. Maybe there's an option here in the user experience, in the user interface, where they can overwrite that. Maybe if it's a face-to-face, there could be a way to change the denomination from USD default to sats. I think that's a good idea. I just want to maybe step aside from making this screen convoluted, like having a web pay option for a tipping jar, maybe managing the POS terminal at the bottom there, charging. I think we also want to maybe include an next section for recent transactions. So the merchant can see if there's actually any incoming transactions that are misplaced or something went awry with them, because usually like Lightning transactions takes seconds, right? We want to make sure there's a way to find out what's going on with faulty transactions as well. So yeah, I just want to make sure like we keep it simple, but I like the fact that you're kind of like putting holes in the design already, and that's the whole point. It's not supposed to be solidified. It's really just starting to start a conversation. Yes, privacy is huge. That's a big one we could talk about. Maybe not. Don't know if you have the time for it now, but it's definitely a big one.
Can you elaborate on that? Who is it? Patricia who wrote it? How is privacy taken care of in a merchant on the merchant side, or what kind of risks are there to leak information for whom? Where are the dangers?
Sorry, there's a bit of noise. There's some. So I'm in the backyard right now, and there's some construction type situation going on. But I don't know. It's an interesting example that you use Starbucks. I believe they use OpenNode in El Salvador, for example. And like I, for one, am scared to purchase anything from them. There's that example. Maybe you've seen this. And this involves, people understanding how to mix coins and know that their transactions are private. But you've probably seen this where it's like people have explained that they might be scared to buy like a Frappuccino because then every transaction on that coin or in their wallet can be like seen potentially if someone doesn't really know how to like keep their wallet private. So yeah, there's a lot of risks, not just involved in like the user buying the coffee, but the merchant knowing what they've done. You'd like to think that most people wouldn't be evil, but who knows? And who knows the safety of the situation or where they're buying the coffee, or if there's gang activity, or trusting that the person who's selling you the coffee is going to be super honest. But there's a lot of ways for your entire history to be exposed by just buying a coffee, and that's incredibly risky. Yeah, there's ways to onboard with education, but right now I don't think most people even really understand how a lack of privacy could really put them backwards. And, we try to like include people financially, and I think our hearts are in the right place, but unfortunately there's a huge level of risk in not designing appropriately with privacy in mind. And that's not me trying to like scare anyone. That's just like the honest truth. So we could have a whole other conversation about privacy and the risks involved in transactions. But I think as designers and as people building, it's our job to do our due diligence to consider the use cases and the ways in which people could run into what could even be a physical risk. If people know you have enough Bitcoin, I certainly hope that wouldn't be the case, but it is true. In a lot of Latin America, there's certain situations, like you see people with dictator presidents and things like this, and like especially if you're a woman, it may not be a good situation. I just wouldn't want to think that we would accidentally design something without the mindfulness of privacy in mind. Yeah, Lightning could fix it if we did it right. But certainly that's why as builders we have to consider privacy as a huge aspect of this.
I think a good aspect here in this experience is that it's a Lightning only, at least so far the way we have been building the tipping services and also this POS service. Being Lightning only, there is no, as a merchant, you don't know anything, basically. You only learn a lot about past UTXO if you do on-chain transaction, but our goal is really to push Lightning as a medium of exchange, not on-chain. And so this is a way that we will limit the risk of at least the on-chain policy issue.
Yeah, payer privacy is pretty good already. I think in Lightning, where the problem lies is really the receiver privacy. And in the case of Starbucks, I think there are some interesting developments coming, like route blinding and stuff on the technical level. But just given this example here, I think Starbucks is not really trying to hide who they are and that they're getting paid. But privacy is really, really important. There are limits, I think, how much interface design can avoid gotchas. So yeah, if you have any ideas on how to mitigate certain concerns, definitely let us know. But since it's better on the payer side anyway, since we're on Lightning. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, well, to Patricia's point, we could have a whole sort of session or line of conversation around the different vectors or angles of which to approach privacy, and education, being one of them. Like there's something to be said here, when for the folks who were on the pay codes call, the static QR code call a while back, there will be these moments where somebody is exposed to Bitcoin because a merchant accepts Bitcoin and say, oh, like, what is that? How does it work? Right. And like, so there's almost potentially onboarding. Well, there's onboarding or education for the person who is receiving BTC. And there's potentially education or at least experience to be designed. This is a little bit tangential to maybe the screens themselves, but for people using or paying with Bitcoin. So definitely a good line of thinking to be talking about.
I think obviously we're quite far over our the call end time now, and what I was wondering is that it seems like there's a lot more to discuss about this topic than what we thought going in. Would people be interested in us setting up a follow-up call to dive into just concentrating on feedback and questions that people might have and contributions from the community? Maybe we can have another call next week about that if people are interested. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So we can still do the async feedback and stuff on Figma and Slack and still continue the conversation, but I'll arrange another call for next week.
Awesome.
Okay. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining. It's been really interesting.
Thanks a lot.
Great chatting with you guys as usual.
Thanks all. Talk soon.
Cheers.
Later.